Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Indie Zone podcast, where we are continuing with our discussion of the Affidavit of Probable Cause at page number 9. And page 9 begins with a depiction, is the second of 4 depictions that Detective Brett Payne has included in this PCA. And then directly adjacent to this second depiction is a legend, and it states as follows under this legend. Number 1, white Elantra seen leaving WSU campus. Number 2, white Elantra seen returning to WSU campus, and there's an address here that is given on Northeast Valley Road. And then arrows are camera locations and indicate vehicle direction of travel, and that concludes the legend. Then underneath the legend and this depiction, Detective Payne continues by stating, on November 25th, 2022, MPD asked area law enforcement agencies to be on the lookout for white Hyundai Elantras in the area. On November 29th, 2022, at approximately 12:28 a.m., Washington State University, and then in parentheses, WSU, end of parentheses. Police officer Daniel Tiengo queried white Elantras registered at WSU. As a result of that query, he located a 2015 white Elantra with a Pennsylvania license plate, and that license plate is given here. Next sentence. This vehicle was registered to Bryan Kohberger, hereinafter, and then in quotes, Kohberger, residing at, and an address is given, on Northeast Valley Road with an apartment number in Pullman, Washington. And then the next statement says that this address is approximately 3/4 of a mile from the intersection of Stadium Way and Cougar Way, and then in parentheses, last camera location that picked up the white Elantra. And then the next paragraph, page 9, states, that same day, at approximately 12:58 a.m., WSU officer Curtis Whitman was looking for white Hyundai Elantras and located a 2015 white Hyundai Elantra at, and gives this same address, on Valley Road in Pullman in the parking lot. And then the final sentence of page 9 going into page 10 states that this address on Valley Road is an apartment complex that houses WSU students. We're going to conclude here, and we'll pick up with the rest of page number 10 in our next episode of this continuing series looking at the Affidavit of Probable Cause 3 years later. If I could provide some commentary, some opinions, some thoughts here completely under the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. Whereas the last several pages of the PCA addressed developments occurring during the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022, page number 9 begins fast forward to November 25th, 2022, and discussing here that MPD, that's the Moscow Police Department, asked area law enforcement agencies for their assistance to be on the lookout for white Hyundai Elantras in the area, and that as a result of that request, that on November 29th, 2022, at approximately 12:28 a.m., and then a half hour later, at approximately 12:58 a.m., 2 separate WSU officers located an Elantra in the parking lot of a complex that houses WSU students, and both of them reported back to the Moscow Police Department this development. We see here also, page number 9, Mr. Kohberger is referenced for the very first time in this PCA by name. This is exactly at the halfway point because this PCA is 18 pages in total. We see here a continuation of what we had seen on prior few pages of Detective Payne making the argument, the assertion that this car, which traveled to Moscow and then returned to Pullman, is one vehicle traveling during the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022, the date of the catastrophic events at 1122 King Road. One final point regarding this be on the lookout. By this time, November 25th and November 29th, it would appear, based on what came before in the PCA, that the Moscow Police Department had considerable video footage of a car that they referred to as Suspect Vehicle 1, wanted in connection with the crimes that occurred at 1122 King Road. However, if you were to pull up this be on the lookout, you will see not one still of the actual Suspect Vehicle 1 is included in that be on the lookout. The be on the lookout has two images. They are stock images of other vehicles, not Suspect Vehicle 1, and one of which has a sunroof on it, which, if you've seen photographs or video of Mr. Kohberger in his car, or the images that, for example, the Idaho State Police disseminated of Mr. Kohberger's car, you'll see that there is no sunroof on that vehicle. So I asked the rhetorical question, if ultimately it was Mr. Kohberger's car that was identified as Suspect Vehicle 1 by Moscow Police Department, then why would a car's sunroof be depicted in this bolo that went out initially to law enforcement and then later to the general public at large? We're going to continue on with our discussion of page number 10 in our next episode of the Indie Zone, leading ultimately to page 18, where Detective Brett Payne is going to ask the magistrate judge, who was Judge Megan E. Marshall at the time, to issue a warrant for Mr. Kohberger's arrest. The PCA in its entirety is available for you to review. It is included in the court documents, Idaho versus Kohberger, which has been released to the public by the Idaho Supreme Court on their Judicial Interest Cases website. And I do encourage you to read the PCA for yourself and come to your own conclusions. Until next time, this is Kathy. Thank you very much for joining us here today.